First, we have Rene Descartes. For him, reliance on reason is the best guide for belief and action. While others were fixated or arguing on the belief of a supreme being or God, Descartes trusted nothing more than the human power of logic. That made him conclude that the human self is divided into two distinct parts. One is the human mind and one is the human body. For him, the mind and body are different and opposite because the mind houses understanding, intellect, and passion, while the body is just a shape that has different sizes that showcase motion. For him, bodies do not have understanding and minds do not have shapes and sizes and even movements. In his famous quote, I think, therefore I am, it clearly says that when he is asked about the understanding of himself, it means that, he replied that he is a thinking thing, and that will be all for Rene Descartes. Thank you. Next we have is John Locke. He said that the mind is a tabula rasa, or a blank slate, which became filled with knowledge derived from experience, observation, and experimentation. Meaning, the self is made or formed by our senses, which are the sense of smell, sight, hearing, and etc. These senses or experiences are part of the collective experiences that are brought to our consciousness, which makes us who we are. Again, we are what we see, we are what we smell, and we are what we feel. All that we are is because of those senses. And that is all from John Locke. Thank you.
Was known as one of the most important philosophers in English as well as in his own time as a historian and as essayist. His major was philosophical works are a treatise of human understanding and concerning the principles of published dialogues concerning natural religion remain medley and deeply eventual modern philosophy. Moro. David Hume. Next is David Hume. He was born in Scotland on May 7, 1711, and he died on August 25, 1776. At the age of 65, he studied at University of Edinburgh.
Immanuel Kant. The philosophy of Immanuel Kant can be divided into two major branches. His theoretical philosophy, which includes metaphysics, is based on the rational understanding of the concept of nature. The second is practical philosophy, comprising of ethics, and political philosophy is based on the concept of freedom. Both of these branches have been immensely influential in the subsequent history of philosophy. David Kant born on 22 April 1724 and died later on 12 of February 1804 at the age of 79. His moral philosophy is philosophy of freedom. Without human freedom, thought Kant moral appraisal and moral responsibility would be impossible. Kant believes that if a person could not act otherwise, then his or her act can have no normal worth. Kant's theory is an example of the ontological moral theory. According to these theories, the rightness or wrongness of actions does not depend on their consequences, but on whether they fulfill our duty. Kant believed that there was a supreme principle of morality, and he refers it as a categorical imperative. It is an ethical orientation that holds that one's action should be undertaken as if he or she had the power to make them universally applicable. Kant's it's all about personal restraint for the good of society. Kant called this the formula of universal law. The formula of universal law therefore says that You should only act for those reasons which have the following characteristics. You can act for that reason while at the same time willing that it would be universal law and everyone adopt it, the reason for acting it.
Paul Montgomery Churchland was born on October 21, 1942, is a Canadian philosopher known for his studies in neurophilosophy and the philosophy of mind. After earning a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Pittsburgh under Wilfrid Sellars in 1969, Churchland rose to the rank of full professor at the University of Manitoba before accepting the Volz Family Endowed Chair in Philosophy at the University of California, San Diego, and a joint appointments in the institution's Institute for Neural Computation on its Cognitive Science faculty. Paul Churchland is famous for championing the thesis that our everyday common-sense folk psychology, which seeks to explain human behavior in terms of the beliefs and desires of agents, is actually a deeply flawed theory that must be eliminated in favor of a mature cognitive neuroscience. Dualism asserts that the mind and the body are separate. Paul Churchland, a modern-day philosopher who studies the brain, disagrees dualism. Rather than dualism, Churchland holds to eliminative materialism, the belief that nothing but not matter exists. The concept behind dualism is that the mind and body are separate. In other words, we do have a single brain and we have a different mind. Dualists have traditionally claimed that the consciousness is the center of our knowledge, and there is an example of
Good afternoon, everyone. Edmund Husserl was a German philosopher and mathematician of Jewish origin who established the school of phenomenology. Husserl argued that the study of consciousness must be actually very different from the study of nature. For him, phenomenology does not proceed from the collection of large amounts of data and to a general theory beyond the data itself. It is the scientific method of induction.
Hi guys, I'm Jason Scordia from Group 2 and I'm the person who assigned to report and to discuss the Ponty or Maurice Jean-Jacques Merleau-Ponty. So let us start. Who is Merleau-Ponty? Maurice Jean-Jacques Merleau-Ponty was a French philosopher and public intellectual. He was the leading academic proponent of existentialism and in post-war France. He was a leading phenomenological existential philosopher, best known for his original and influential work on embodiment, perception, and ontology. He also made the important contribution of philosophy of art, history, language, nature, and politics. He has a profound influence on French philosophy and social theory. Merleau-Ponty published two major theoretical texts during his lifetime: The Structure of Behavior and Phenomenology of Perception. And his associate in his early years with his existentialist movement through his friendship with Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir. Merleau-Ponty played a central role in the dissemination of phenomenology, which he sought to integrate with Gestalt psychology, psychoanalysis, Marxism, and Sausarian linguistics. Merleau-Ponty was born in March 14, 1908, and he died at the age of 53 on May 3, 1961 at Paris, France. His alma mater, École Normale Supérieure, University of Paris. That is all. Thank you. I hope you learn a lot of my presentation.
Michel Foucault, 1926-1984. He was a French historian and philosopher, associated with the structuralist and post-structuralist movements. He has had strong influence not only or even primarily in philosophy, but also in a wide range of humanistic and social scientific disciplines. Foucault was born in Poitiers, France on October 1826. As a student, he was brilliant but psychologically tormented. He became academically established during the 1960s, holding a series of positions at French universities. Before his selection in 1969 to the ultra-prestigious Collège de France, where he was professor of the history of systems of thought until his death from the 1970s on. Foucault was very active politically. Paul Michel Foucault, born on 15 October 1926 at Poitiers, French Third Republic. He died at 25 June 1984 at age of 57 in Paris, France. His education equally normally superior. Michel Foucault was a French philosopher and historian, one of the most influential and controversial scholars of the post-World War II period. Michel Foucault was born to a celebrity Polish family. He resisted what he regarded as the provincialism of his upbringing and his native country, and his career was marked by frequent sojourns abroad. A distinguished but sometimes erratic student, Foucault gained entry at the age of 20 to the École Normale Supérieure in Paris in 1946. There, he studied psychology and philosophy, embraced and then abandoned communism and established a reputation as a brilliant and eccentric student. Foucault appropriately placed in the critical tradition of philosophical inquiry stemming from Kant, but his thought matured through the multiplicity of its engagements. After then, a history of systems of human thought would those have to be specifically local history. It would have to recognize that all ideas are normative, no matter what their content. It could be a history of truth, but it also would have to be a long and in its own way tragic history of tragic. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. Richard Rorty, 1931 to 2007, developed distinctive and controversial brand of pragmatism that expressed itself along two main x-axes. One is negative, a critical diagnosis of what Rorty takes to be defining projects of modern philosophy. The other is positive, an attempt to show what intellectual culture might look like once we free ourselves from the governing metaphors of mind and knowledge in which traditional problems of epistemology and metaphysics, and indeed Rorty's view, the self-conception of modern philosophy, are rooted. The centerpiece of Rorty's critique is the provocative account offered in Philosophy and the Mirror of Nature, 1979, hereafter PMN.
Is the Eastern philosophy. It focuses on India and China. These two are the oldest and most influential origin of thoughts. The beliefs of Eastern philosophy: Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Persian, and Arabic. Was an Indian philosopher who was one of the most important exponents of the Sri Vaishnava tradition. Within Hinduism, his philosophical foundation for devotionalism were influential to three Bhakti movement. Bhakti movement was a revolution started by the Hindu saints to bring religious reforms by adopting the method of devotion to achieve salvation. Gautama Buddha was born 567 BCE. He was the founder of Buddhist religion. He also developed a rich philosophical system of thoughts that challenged notions of permanence and personal identity. Lao Tzu is a Chinese philosopher born on 571 BCE, and his death was unknown. He was the founder of the philosophy of Taoism. That's all. Thank you.